the classic trolley problem is that a trolley is running down a track, and there are 5 people either tied to the track or they're workers, and they don't know the trolley.
What race?
Jewish.
Run them over. No. Go. 5 people are tied to the track.
And
Okay.
you've got one on the other side,
Yes.
or one on another track.
Because the track splits, I presume.
Very clever.
Gotcha. Thank you. I'm good at
And
this.
and they've got a lever that you can. It's kind of
Yes.
next to you, and you can pull the lever. And if you pull the lever, 5 people are saved, and the trolley runs over 1 person.
Yeah.
And the question is simply, would you pull the lever? I don't know. Would you pull the lever?
I don't think.
I love this question. All right, so this is Alex O'Connor on the Flagrant Podcast speaking about one of the most beautiful ethical conundrums known as the trolley problem. And a lot of people think this is just philosophical mumbo-jumbo. Who cares about this? But it really gets people to understand their worldview. It exposes how they think about the world. It gets people that haven't actually done this exercise or haven't really thought deeply why they think the way they do to examine their positions. And more than anything, I think this exposes people's ideology. A lot of people know what they believe, but they don't often have the terminology to describe their worldview. Obviously, that's something that you tend to do in philosophy, and it also gets you to justify your position the deeper you go into the dilemma. And what I love about this is that when you actually have a look at the statistics, like the amount of people that say they would pull the lever versus those that won't pull the lever, it is very revealing to say the least. Anyway, let's go on with this problem.
I think you pull it.
No?
I don't think so.
Why
Because
not?
now you're responsible for death.
Yeah, because then you are letting 5 people die rather than making 1 person die. And I think letting versus actively doing changes it.
Can we ask?
That's interesting. And one, I'd say I was actually I was actually expecting this guy to say I would pull the lever, because statistically, I've asked this question many times to many people, by the way, and the statistics are also very clear online that the majority of people would say they pull the lever, which is very interesting. And one, the idea that you're letting people die is something I have an issue with. I mean, if you really expand upon that argument, you're saying, okay, so yeah, you have the power to pull the lever, but you also, if we apply this to the real world, you also have the power right now to potentially, because this is the thing, it's all potential, to go out, if you care about the people that are dying in places that you are very concerned about, like let's say in Palestine or something like that, and you really want to save these people, you have the power to go and fight for them, to risk your life and to save those people from dying. You have the power to do that. So the idea that you are letting these people die is the same idea that you are letting people die right now by not being on the front steps of every war where there is injustice. It moves into this world of logical insanity where you're responsible for everything. And you can't really adopt that worldview without making yourself responsible for everything. And it's not supposed to work like that within at least the classical sense of human rights, which is what I look at when I'm talking about ethics, universal ethics, and morality here, right? The idea of saying that you're responsible because you didn't go out and save people from dying. They're not your responsibility. Now, it's one thing if you have been given the top, for instance, if you've taken on the responsibility of protecting someone, like protecting a child, to feed a child, that's something that you've taken upon yourself, and they're under your care, your supervision, and you decide not to actually feed them, well, obviously you're responsible for that. But a situation where you happen to be in a situation where you could, like anyone else, save 5 lives, but would require you to kill someone, well, first of all, it's not your responsibility, and I would make the argument, which is the argument the guy is making, which is far more important. This is the primary argument, that you're basically killing someone. You're taking on the responsibility of killing someone to potentially save people, and that is something that I think everyone should take issue with. But interestingly enough, more often than not, people usually go with I'm saving lives, therefore it's acceptable, which is no different to saying that, you can kill someone in order to save multiple people, 2, 3, 4, 5, a million people. That's the worldview of utilitarianism. That's the idea that the goal is the only rule. And of course, the goal is a strategy. It's not a definitive thing. It's not something that exists in the real world. You're trying to achieve something. And this is the logical insanity. People that always advocate for tyranny say that they're trying to do good things. oh, you're killing millions of people in Palestine. Well, we are trying to protect our sovereignty. We're trying to protect. We're trying to keep everyone safe. We're saving lives. And these are intangibles, right? This is always the plea of every tyrant. It is the plea of every dictator that we are doing it for the greater good. And this is the argument that you tend to lean into when you're doing something that is wrong. And a lot of people don't realize they're doing this when they pull the lever in this trolley dilemma. This is why I love it. But anyway, let's go on.
I pull the lever. Okay, go. What about you, Al?
I don't pull the lever. Same reason.
Are we allowed to ask questions about the people, or does that destroy the whole?
Well,
you can.
Like age, for example, might be important.
In this circumstance, you don't know, right?
I'm actually really impressed. So I think we've had at least 2 people have said they would not pull the lever. Wow. Okay, let's go on.
Or you assume that they're all like 25. But
Got it. They're of equal
what you
ages.
can then do once you work out whether you pull the lever or not is then start changing these variables.
Okay. Give me the toughest
You pull
variable.
the lever?
That really helps.
Lever?
Yeah. Would you pull the lever?
No.
Why
Wait,
not?
what is it? It's
I love this. I love this question so much because here's the thing. We're bringing another equation, right? Like age into the variable, into the conversation. Things like their race, which we kind of joked about. Oh, were they Jewish? I mean, this is what I hate that we tend to do. Like we tend to justify these things. Well, it's okay for me to kill someone because, they're this age or they're this sex or they're this race, and they haven't done anything wrong. Definitively, you're just making these assumptions, right? You try to justify it, and well, I mean, even if they have, like, are we going to take on the responsibility of being trial, like jury and executor? Is that the phrase, right? Like, we're going to take on the responsibility of actually killing innocent people now by judging them. Oh, wait, you voted for Trump, so it's all right for me to kill you. You have this position politically where you believe in open borders, so now it's okay for me to kill you. I mean, these should not justify violence. And the thing is, right, like regardless of what you think, I think it's fair to say that classically within the world, at least for the last few hundred years, most of society, most of Western society has looked at this ideal, universal ethics, as being this model where we don't violate people based on their race, that we don't discriminate, we don't kill people. It's called human rights. I mean, this is the basis of human rights. The idea is that you don't violate people because they have these rights that are sacrosanct. It's not some arbitrary thing where you get to say, hey, look, we get to violate your right. The whole idea of human rights or rights is that they are unalienable. You can't change them. You can't say, I'm going to violate your rights now because, well, I'm concerned about saving other people's lives, right? But we seem to do this, at least in the current political framework. And we don't even have rights in the classical sense. I mean, most people say they do, but they either don't understand human rights or they are playing this political game using sophistry in order to justify the erosion of your rights, or they believe in liberty, which is very different. Liberty is, classically speaking, a term that denotes governments actually giving you freedom, but it's not unalienable. It's like, we'll give you liberty to be able to go out, but we can take that right away from you because now there is a virus that might endanger people. So now we're going to take away that right. That's not how rights are actually supposed to work, right? But this is the idea of human rights. But so many people seem comfortable violating that in the interest of saving lives. So when I see people that actually, at least from a natural instinctive response, say, hey, look, no, I'm not going to pull the lever, it's encouraging because, like I said, statistically, from what I've read and from what I've also experienced, the vast majority of people pull the lever. And I would imagine if you're watching this video, your instinctive gut response, and I could be wrong, would have been to pull the lever, right? And what's interesting, I've also noticed, is that when people feel as if the majority of people are actually in line with them, they somehow feel more emboldened to do that. So I like making these videos because it gets people to really think about why they feel the way they do, whether or not it's been socially constructed because everyone else feels this way, that's why they accept it, or whether they actually instinctively feel it's wrong. Because instinctively, I've always thought that shit is wrong. I'm not killing anyone for any reason, and I don't care what the circumstances are. If you're a Jew, if you're a black, I don't care. If you're someone that I even absolutely hate, I'm not killing you to save anyone. I'm going to try to save my friends, save my family, save anyone I love, but you don't. And the thing is, we typically do this, I think, because of the laws, right? most classical laws respect rights. At least they try to. We don't do things like saying, hey, look, it's a right for you to kill this person because you were trying to save your parents. Like, let's say my family was dying. I had two brothers that were dying, and I saw some guy that was, only like he's 40 years old. He's lived most of his life, and he had good kidneys. So I stole his kidneys, right? And I used them to save my brothers that were actually dying of kidney failure. We wouldn't say that from a universal standpoint that it was acceptable to do that because it violates their rights. But when you're saying you're going to pull the lever and you're taking responsibility of actually killing someone in order to save multiple people, that's effectively what you're doing. And it is a really interesting scenario. But anyway, let's go on.
It's going to hit 5.
Going to hit 5, and if you pull it,
if you don't pull the lever, it hits 5. If you pull the lever, it hits 1, but you pull the lever.
Will they all follow me on Instagram? I don't.
That's beautiful. I like. Obviously, he's joking, but that is actually another consideration I believe a lot of people have. What do I get from this? What are you going to do for me if I? And a lot of people think like that. A lot of people have this idea. Well, if I save someone's life, I'll save it because I'll get all of this good stuff in the process. I mean, I'll get all of it. I'll feel really good about myself, and that might be a motivation. But the thing is, regardless of what the motivation is, it shouldn't be the thing that should dictate whether or not you kill or you violate someone. Like, it's all irrelevant in the realm of human rights. These thoughts are only necessary if you're trying to be this moral relativist, this utilitarian. Because the thing is, a lot of people have this idea that, well, I have a different worldview to you, and it's acceptable to do these things, and I don't care about your human rights and all this kind of stuff. That's just your opinion. But the thing is, if you're going to adopt that kind of worldview, and if you're going to try to be logically consistent, it now allows other people to do that same shit to you. Like, you might not have a problem killing someone in order to save 5 lives, but other people are not going to have a problem killing you to save other people. And most people, I would say the vast majority of people, are not willing to have that kind of worldview apply to them. And that's the illogical insanity. And this is typically why we have the rule of law, right? It's supposed to represent the natural law, the natural rights of people in its truest, purest form. But a lot of people have this idea, well, I think it's okay to kill someone if I get something from it, when that should really never be the question. But it is interesting that even though it's a joke, it kind of is the mentality that I believe a lot of people have. It's like, well, will I get rewarded a lot of money? And I've asked versions of this question. Like, one of my parent friends told me that he would push a button if he knew that it would kill someone that he didn't know somewhere in the world, and he'd get $1 million. And he's like, yeah, I'm sure, like most people would do that. And I listen to this guy, I was thinking to myself, what? And the frustrating thing is, a lot of times when people say this, they're open about it, right? And look, I think a lot of people are, but then they somehow imply that you have that worldview. Just because you have a fucked up worldview does not mean believe me, I'm not doing this for like millions of dollars. I'm not doing this for clout. I just wouldn't do that shit. There are certain things that I would try to do in order to gain influence and so forth, but I'm not taking anyone's life. And it's got nothing to do with how much money you're going to give to me. It's got nothing to do with whether you're Jew or black, because I actually do believe in universal rights and ethics. And I think a lot of people, they claim to, but they don't actually believe it in terms of act that way. And I think Jordan Peterson somehow makes that same, at least inference when he's talking about belief in terms of acting out that worldview as if your life depended on it. And that, I guess that's, in that definition, that is something that I believe, because it's not something that I not only logically, rationally think is right, but I actually act out in the real world. And I think a lot of people don't.
I don't think that I could be responsible for it.
Okay, so then here's the thing, right? So one way you could adapt this is say, because at least the 3 of you think that you wouldn't pull the lever. What if it was 100 people on that track?
Think that they wouldn't know. I think that, even though it seems subtle, I think that's also telling. It's like they've told you they wouldn't pull the lever. And I think when people are saying, you don't really know what you think, it's alluding to the idea that you don't really hold that viewpoint. And I think that may apply, but I definitely don't feel that way. I know I wouldn't pull the lever.
What if it was 1,000 people on that track?
Yeah, eventually you get to
What if
the
it's
number.
like a city? Or what if it was like your own mother? Surely there is some circumstance in which you would kind of be okay with.
And this is the slippery slope argument. This is what utilitarians do all the time, right? This is, and you will always go down this route. Well, okay, 5 people, 10 people, 1,000 people, 1,000,000 people. I mean, you kill 5 people, people might call you a murderer. You kill 1 million, well, then you're a revolutionist. You're a conqueror. You did it for other aspirations. And if you're working in the governmental level, yeah, maybe. But being part of a government doesn't change good or bad. I think good or bad doesn't change based off of like whether you are powerful or whether you are working under a government or whether you're in a war. Like, it's still wrong or right. It doesn't somehow magically change because of the number. Like, okay, and this is what utilitarians, I think, tend to do a lot of the times. It's justifiable now, and I think a lot of people have sympathy for this worldview. Of course, yeah, like, you're going to save 1 million lives. Maybe. You don't know that. I mean, this is being logical over here, because there's the principle standpoint, well, you don't do it because it's wrong. And then the logical argument, as irrational as it may seem to some people, you don't definitively know that that you are going to save millions of people's lives by choosing to kill one person. Maybe that leads to a chain of events, the butterfly effect, that leads to even greater people dying. And this is the logical aspect of this kind of thinking that a lot of people don't really like to flesh out. You don't definitively know that. You're appealing to potentiality. And this is in the realm of logic and reason. Now, I realize, practically speaking, yeah, we're always looking at the future and we think that it's going to lead to the greatest amount of good, but maybe you don't know that.
I feel this way about abortion.
Right.
Like, 1 or 2 or 4 is fine, but like 1,000.
Yeah,
you got to pull the lever on that girl, right?
Like if one.
Yeah, well, it's either right or it's either wrong, right? So, but as a utilitarian, of course, it's always a spectrum issue. It's like, yeah, you can have, 1 or 2 abortions is fine, but, you have like 3 or 4, I don't know if that's wrong. But of course, if you're taking on a principle stance, and I think the principle stance is the only way to look at it if you're classically, and I say this because morality in the eyes of most people is something that's completely subjective, but classically in the way we at least we used to look at this within the Western sense anyway, based on these concept of universal ethics, which we refer to as human rights. If something is inherently wrong in the moment, in the nature, violates someone's rights, it's wrong inherently, right? And you don't get to do that. So regardless of your stance in abortion, if you think it's wrong, it's wrong. If you think it's right, it's right. It shouldn't be a question of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. That's a spectrum, utilitarian kind of worldview.
One person had 1,000 abortions.
Yeah, like eventually there's a lever where you're like, all right, sew it up or something.
Yeah. But okay.
I joke, I'm being hyperbolic, but at the same time, you're like, wait, what is going on here?
You can work this out. Like you can figure out what you think about abortion. So take a like a 1-year-old child and take like 1,000 fertilized zygotes and put them on the other side of the track and ask what someone would do. Which would they run over?
Child.
And I think it's well, like some people actually would.
Well, yeah, that's actually an important component, because we're looking at whether or not that person is. We're at least making the assumption here that when we're dealing with the train tracks dilemma, that we're actually dealing with sentient beings. I would say, like human actual beings, or people that have awareness, sentience, that have the right to life. And it comes to, I guess, epistemologically, we're looking at whether or not a baby is actually alive in terms of a fetus. I mean, I wouldn't call a fetus a baby, and this is the debate. This is the epistemological argument as to whether or not it is. And people say, well, science shows this, and of course, science doesn't really mean jack shit to me, because there have been many scientific things that have been proved to be completely nonsense. But it comes down to what your position is on that thing actually having rights, being sentient and so forth. And that's the real question, and that's a valid question. Are we dealing with, but things such as like age and sex are completely irrelevant in terms of what these factors determining whether or not you would kill or not kill a person in order to save lives, at least from a classical human rights standpoint. But from the utilitarian perspective, yeah, it all matters. But in terms of whether that thing is a sentient being, actually has the right to life, that is a very important question.
Say that, and that's fine.
Yeah,
that's your view, but it helps you to work out what you actually believe. Because a lot of people will look at that and be like, if I'm being honest with myself, what I would probably do is I would probably run over those zygotes. You can't even see them; they're like dust on the floor.
Absolutely. Most people, I think, actually, it could be wrong, but I think most people would do that with the assumption it's not actually life. But most people that would have the viewpoint that is life and that thing has a right to life, I think would choose. Actually, statistically, I think people would still choose to kill that thing. But in terms of the consideration, it's only consideration for people that have this universal human rights standpoint, the ontological standpoint, as to whether or not that thing is sentient.
Right, and that's probably what I would do. So you adapt it in such a way as to, and you can apply it to specific
And that
examples
doesn't
to
mean
help
that
you
you
figure
don't
out.
think it's wrong. Those
No,
people
no.
might think it's really wrong, but
It
in
just
this
helps you
moment,
figure out what's so here. What we've just pulled out is the
Yeah.
difference between doing and allowing, which is like a really important ethical distinction.
Yeah.
It is actually a really good ethical distinction, and I think the problem is that people equate allowing as being, as even being an ethical issue, not realizing that that is the most subjective issue you can. This is why, typically, classically, within natural law, you don't add this element into the equation. If there are people that are dying in another country, and you made the argument, I'm allowing that to happen, I mean, that would be ridiculous, right? But that's effectively the same thing. It's like, why are you not on the front lines of every war that is going on right now? Why aren't you in Rafah, in Palestine? If you're some bleeding heart liberal that is angry about the injustice that's going on in this country, and I'm with you. Don't get this twisted. I'm with you, but to say that it's your responsibility and you allow that shit to happen by not going out and fighting. I mean, people say that silence is violence, right? Which is something I used to kind of submit myself to, because I still feel there's this obligation, but it's an obligation I impose upon myself. I don't impose it upon other people. And in the realm of classical ethics, like there are hierarchies to this shit, but from a human rights standpoint, no, your silence is not violence. You not going out and fighting wars that could actually kill you or even potentially make the problem worse, because you don't know, is not violence. You choosing not to speak out about something is not violence. It's not a form of aggression. Granted, I would say it's virtuous to do so. It's not violence, and it's not even on the same stratospheric, universal realm as the idea of actually killing, murdering. I mean, these are actual real moral issues, where other issues like whether or not you choose to act in the light of tyranny, these are virtues. These are things that you should do, but it's more subjective, but you cannot be compelled to do. And this is the distinction that people, I think these are the biggest ethical dilemmas, whether or not like the whole idea around allowing versus actually doing. And if you're trying to really be logically consistent, then you cannot accept this idea of allowing, because it leads to this logically insane worldview where you can always make the argument, well, you allow this to happen. And this is what politicians do, or very, very skillful debaters do when they're trying to make someone complicit. Well, you said nothing about all the shit that was going on in that country and so forth, because we're all guilty of that. There are so many injustices around the world that there is no way that you could stand up to every single one. Therefore, through proxy, you're always guilty. And to use that as a justification for violence is what tyrants do. Well, you weren't fighting out against the injustices in Palestine. You weren't on the front steps fighting against that. Therefore, it's all right for me to kill you. That's one argument that I find tyrants use. And then the argument is, hey, we're doing it for your safety. It's in the interest of the greater good. Hey, look, we got to kill this person to save 5 lives. Necessity and the greater good argument is the plea of every tyrant, is the war cry of every dictator. And it has always been like that. It's no different now than it was 100 or 1,000 years ago. And those that buy into this worldview will always down the line, if they act on it, be made to do horrible things. Hey, look, we were doing it because we were trying to save lives. And then in retrospect, when they realized that their actions didn't actually save lives, it actually ended up killing a lot more people. And we could say that about recent events over the last few years, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, does this sound familiar? Well, I thought it was necessary because I wanted to save people from, dying of some invisible virus. That's the claim. I was doing it to protect grandma, right? Rather than saying, hey, look, you can do what you want, but I'm not going to force you to do this shit because I can't sacrifice you for the greater good. But this is even the standpoint from a political, governmental worldview, in the sense that we try to impose these, what are they called? Public health and safety measures, right? This is a common thing we do from a utilitarian standpoint. We actually sacrifice the natural rights of people. We essentially impose certain things on them, essentially violate their bodily autonomy in order to potentially protect the majority, which is a direct violation of the natural law, of the common law, the natural rights of the basic conventions that we learnt from the Second World War that we don't apply. Like this idea of the Nuremberg Code, of actually respecting someone's bodily autonomy, of consent, not using this argument that we're trying to save lives. I mean, this is, if you actually have a look at the first clause of the Nuremberg Code, it's that consent must be voluntary. Of course, we don't respect that. These are all in line with natural rights, but we move away from this stuff anytime we start saying, well, we have to consider the greater good. Anyway, I could lecture you for days about this argument, but I always find this dilemma so revealing.
There are differences between doing and allowing. And it doesn't mean that allowing people to die is always right. It just means that it's less bad than proactively killing people, right? So then...
Agreed.
Okay, so take an example where one of my favorites is the trolley's going down a track and there's one person tied up, and there's another track where there's also just one person tied up.
Oh, this is brilliant. Okay, so there are permutations of this trolley problem. I'll let him continue with this, but there's basically two parts to the trolley problem, and you can't really get people to understand the trolley problem until you do the second part, which I think he's doing now.
But you think you'll really get a kick out of killing someone? You think it's going to be like great fun? Is it wrong to pull the lever?
Oh no, this is a slight variation. All right, so we're bringing whether or not it's actually enjoyable for you to kill someone into the equation, which is an interesting argument.
Yeah.
Why?
Because wanting to kill people for fun is bad.
Why?
I actually have that. Like, here's the thing: don't kill people because it's inherently wrong because you don't get to violate them. Whether or not you enjoy it. Now, that's a consideration as to your moral worth, as to what I think about you, but it should not determine whether or not you get to do that thing, right? Like, here's the thing. You can't think of the idea of making any moral argument to do something that's wrong acceptable because someone enjoys it or doesn't enjoy it should never be a factor. Well, look, I chose to kill that person because I enjoyed it. Like, that would never be an argument. Whether in a court of law or from any emotional standpoint or any logical standpoint, I chose to rape that person because I mean, come on, the idea is absurd. Like, the fact that we even entertain this is concerning to me. Whether or not you liked it, I mean, granted, we consider these things in terms of assessing our viewpoint on someone's character, which is all relevant in terms of whether or not we hold someone in esteem. And we all do this consciously or unconsciously. But the idea of allowing something like that to determine whether or not, to act as a justification for any kind of actual violence should never be acceptable.
I assume this is an impulse that once you break that seal, it's quite possible you break it
But
again.
suppose we just know that this person is a perfectly well integrated member of society who recognizes that this kind of kick they get out of the thought of killing someone is totally immoral and they'd never act in accordance with it.
Yeah.
But look, I've got this opportunity.
So this is, to me, doing is worse than allowing.
To enact upon
What's
it.
interesting with the first one,
This is Dexter.
And be guilt-free.
Are you familiar with
Oh, this is actually really good. The whole Dexter dynamic here. You see, one of the interesting things about Dexter is he actually acts as... Now, this is the tricky thing. Dexter has a code where he doesn't kill bad people, right? And he's acting as judge, executor. I think most of us wouldn't have a problem with the kind of people that he's killing because these people are murderers. I mean, we're talking about violent acts here. Not this progressive shit like, oh, he said something bad against Trump and whatever nonsense people want to come up with to justify violence. We're talking about people who have actually killed people, done unspeakable things, violated their natural rights. This is like actual violence here, okay? And he's going around and killing these people. However, he's not killing any innocent people. And the factor is that he actually enjoys killing these people. Now, definitively, him enjoying it is never a justification for it. Now, granted, you might be able to justify it by saying these people have actually violated people and so forth, and I wouldn't argue that. I'd say, look, if someone has actually violated someone, yeah, obviously they should receive some kind of justice. And the problem, though, is that when you take on the role of being executor and saying that someone has, I mean, if you could definitively proven that someone had actually done something, a heinous criminal violent act, then comes the element of how we deal with that in terms of restitution and trying to see justice. And this eye for an eye mentality is one approach, but that's something for another topic. All we're talking about here is the act of actually killing someone and whether or not that should be motivated by you enjoying it. And I'd say absolutely no. Interestingly, I think people look at Dexter as a case where, look, they don't have a problem with him killing these people, but it's not because he enjoys it. They don't really care about it. They would they care about it in terms of him as a person. Dexter, that's not the kind of person I want to hang out with. The guy's creepy, crazy. But you know what? I would feel a lot more comfortable around Dexter than I would with... there's this other show I watch called You, around this killer, who a lot of people compare to Dexter, but he truly is a bad person, right? Now, granted, this guy is actually not does not have the mental disorder that Dexter has, where he's socially weird. This character in You is actually very socially adjusted, very intelligent, very aware, has all of his emotions, but he's actually classically not a psycho, not a sociopath in the sense that he is disconnected, because actually he's very empathetic, emotional, but he's just a bad person. This is what a lot of people don't get from the show. The guy just does things for the most horrendous reasons, and they're always utilitarian. Like, he's always making these justifications. Hey, look, I'm doing this because it's going to serve some greater good. I had to do this, etc., etc., etc. But he does all of the most horrible, horrific shit using these kind of justifications, right? And granted, they're both killers, Dexter and this character from You. The distinction is that whereas Dexter is actually killing bad, horrible people, that have actually violated people's lives and so forth. And granted, he may enjoy that. The vast majority of people, not that that is actually a real equation as to whether or not it's justifiable or moral, but I think it's understandable that most people do not have an issue with what Dexter is doing, because he's actually doing this to horrible, evil people, right? And there's an argument to be made that when someone actually violates you, has done something horrible to someone else, this is the whole element of justice and so forth. That's different to someone that has done no wrong against you, no actual violence against you or anyone else, and you're taking on their life and you're initiating that. And whereas you may not like that at all, like the character in You, you're still doing it. That makes you an egregiously, inherently bad person, because you've actually violated someone from a classical standpoint. And the whole Dexter situation, that's a situation where, yeah, you don't want to have dinner with that guy, but it's definitely not the same thing.
The show?
I haven't seen it.
He's a serial killer that finds a way to kill just bad
cool.
people.
Yeah. Right. So
this is the trolley problem.
It's not even that they're bad people. It's not like, oh, they deserve this. It's literally like
somebody's got to die.
Somebody's got to die here.
I get to scratch my itch.
Exactly. And here's an interesting consideration: is that, have you ever heard of utilitarianism?
Yeah.
So the
greatest good for the greatest number of people, right?
And that's usually cashed out in terms of maximizing pleasure or minimizing suffering,
Pain, yeah.
right? This is what morality is about. That's what it is for the utilitarian. And pleasure is defined very broadly there. It doesn't just mean
okay.
It doesn't
it's not a brothel.
Exactly. It's like anything which is well-being. Exactly.
That's how
food, shelter.
And so here's the thing, right? If you're a utilitarian, then suppose it's not you. Suppose it's someone else who's going to pull that lever, and you know for a fact that they will get some pleasure out of pulling that lever and killing that person. It might not just be that it's permissible for them to pull the lever. If you're a utilitarian, it might be a duty. They might have to, because that will.
And this is the problem. And look. Whereas I maintain that the pleasure argument really should not come into the equation in terms of whether or not you actually kill someone. The idea that in utilitarianism makes that a very troubling philosophy. And that's the least concerning thing about it. The problem with it is that you actually can justify anything. No moralist, no true moralist is going to use the utilitarian argument, because any person that's actually done this exercise to its logical conclusion realizes that you can justify anything with utilitarianism. Name it. Name anything. I mean, killing babies, rape, murder, any kind of horrible thing. Well, it may lead to saving lives. And it's just really easy, particularly if you're a creative person like me. And I'm just saying, to justify anything with utilitarianistic logic, because you're appealing to the unknown. Well, by me, or you can make arguments like it's going to make someone feel really good. They get some kind of buzz from it. Hey, how about that? And that's going to make them do a lot more good in the world. And I often hear people, the utilitarians, always make arguments like, yeah, if I do some experiments on people and I kill them, and then it leads to coming up with inoculations that save millions, but billions of people, and it's been done before. There's nothing wrong with that. And look, in hindsight, yeah, you might be happy the fact that it's led to all this good, right? But it would never be justifiable to do horrible things for the potential for greater good. And this is the distinction between the utilitarian, who is basically a believer in strategies, goals. But people call this morality in their twisted obfuscation of language, right? Like, utilitarianism is a strategy. Like, the idea of a moral is more of it's based on the idea of something in the moment being inherently wrong. Like, don't kill, don't rape, don't steal, don't do something. A goal deals with the potentiality. It's a construct. It's an appeal to what might happen. And this is what you're doing with utilitarian logic. You're dealing with the unknown. And we're trying to bring that into the realm of reality. Anytime we're dealing with probability, statistics, you're dealing with ideas, concepts that are not tangible. The future does not exist. We're only in the present moment. So doing something, as in like killing someone, is something that is actually a thing. The idea of saying that, you're trying to achieve something, that's something that's intangible. And this is the distinction between the utilitarian worldview. And it's so dangerous, I find. It's very useful. I think what's useful and what can be moral is when you apply limits to utilitarianism. This is when you move into what's called general rule utilitarianism, where let's say you can have some classic human rights, right? Like don't kill, don't rape, don't steal, right? But then they're not in the realm, there's no initiation of violence here, but you're actually deciding whether or not you save someone or how you spend your efforts. For instance, a real utilitarian decision is whether or not you save the life of a 5-year-old child or you save the life of a 99-year-old man that is about to die, right? Like you choose whether or not you want to save someone, right? Now, not kill someone. Like you couldn't kill the 99-year-old man in order to save the 5-year-old child. But if you had the ability to choose how you're going to use your time and energy to go and, for instance, give blood to a 5-year-old kid or a 99-year-old man or a woman and so forth, yes, subjectively you can make that decision, and it's very subjective, but it's acceptable. But as soon as you start saying things like we're going to kill, we're actually going to violate people's rights, that's when it becomes a problem. Anyway, I want to end. I don't want this to be too much of a trip into the permutations of this trolley problem. But the second aspect of the trolley problem, which I think is the most fundamental and gets people to really understand where they're coming from, is the scenario. Whereas in the classic scenario, the trolley problem, train's going down and there's 5 people on the track. You can pull the lever, switch. You kill one person, you save 5. What's interesting is, whereas I think I said prior, the majority of people would actually choose to pull the lever. And it's refreshing to see that at least a couple of Andrew's friends in this podcast, 2 of the comedians, said they wouldn't pull the lever. Maybe comedians are just more empathic, or in my worldview, more moral when it comes to these dilemmas. But I believe, at least statistically speaking, most people would choose to. What's interesting, right, is that whereas 90% of people would actually choose to pull the lever, when you apply the scenario to a situation where, let's say, you just change the environment, but effectively it's the same thing, and you say, well, you're on a train now. Now you can choose to push someone off the train, this fat person off the train, and it somehow, I can't remember exactly the situation, the circumstances, but essentially by pushing this person off the train, it's somehow going to prevent the train from killing all the people on board. And by physically pushing someone and killing them, physically pushing them yourself, as opposed to pulling the lever, would you actually push that person off the train, which would lead to saving multiple lives, but effectively kill that person? And what's interesting is that the vast majority of people would actually switch their position and would not physically push that guy off the train. And it basically switches from 90% saying they pulled the lever to only 10% saying they would push the person on the train. And what changes here is that effectively it's both circumstances are the same in terms of outcome. By pulling the lever, it's the same thing as actually physically pushing someone, right? You pulled a lever that is in turn going to kill someone versus you pushing someone off of a train that's going to physically kill them. People see this detachment from the responsibility, from the accountability, and there lies the problem. The logical inconsistency in this dilemma is that, the logical consistency within this choice is that people don't see just how directly connected they are to that decision. And this is at the heart of the problem. People don't have at least the awareness on an intuitive or logical level to grasp the fact that they're actually doing the same thing. They somehow feel removed from the violence, but in reality, they're doing the same thing. But the consistent position, both logically, principally, and I would say morally effectively, is to not kill anyone and to, you say, allow it to happen, but not intervene. Because I don't have the right to kill anyone. You don't have the right to violate someone. And more importantly, granted, you can make the argument that it's for the greater good and so forth. If we apply that rule that it's okay for you to do that across the board, you also have to accept that it's a right for people to sacrifice you if they're trying to create more good in the world. Therefore, if getting rid of all the kids or all the old people or all the black people or all the Jews or put in what you want is going to be better for the greater good, it's acceptable under this worldview if you're being logically consistent. The reason we don't apply that is because it's an absolutely immoral way of doing things. And typically within a governmental system, we try to have a balance between these principles of human rights, at least in the current age, and utilitarian outcomes. But essentially, any kind of utilitarianism that erodes on people's freedoms is a trap to allowing people that want to manipulate you to doing horrible things. And the worldview of any deontologist, any person that actually believes in human rights, is that, we all want different things in society, but you can't do that shit because you wouldn't want it done to you, and it's a violation of the natural rights. And that's the takeaway from the trolley problem, at least from me, and it should be from most people that really understand this problem. That from a human rights position, you can't do anything. From a utilitarian position, pull the lever. There are a lot of people that kind of go with their instincts, but when they look at this logically consistently, they'll find that it doesn't always match up. And this is what the trolley problem gets people to realize. Anyway, they're my thoughts on this problem, and I thought it was a really interesting conversation that Alex O'Connor had with Andrew in this podcast. They covered quite a lot of different things there, but I found that particular point stuck out to me, and it really maps out how people view their world. So I'd invite you to bring this up with your girlfriend, your brother, your sister, or someone perhaps that you're having difficulties with when you're talking politics, to at least understand where they're coming from, to assess kind of like what they feel, even though they may not always articulate it, or just to ask yourself what you feel. At the very least, it will get you to understand yourself better if you haven't had this thought exercise. Anyway, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, remember there are 3 things that cannot remain hidden for long: the sun, the moon, and the wisdomatic truth bombs of the chocolate Nubian soul brother from Ghana, West Africa, a.k.a. the esoteric noetic, a.k.a. Krishool. Peace out. Give us a like. Share this video. Tell your mom, tell your friends about it. Peace!